Our daughters who have watched their mothers become the first female president of the Marshall Islands, of Namibia, North Macedonia, Peru, of Slovenia or Suriname. All presidents joining us here today. For so many of you, of us here in this room, we hold these positions that when we ourselves were young seemed unattainable, but are now almost normal for the next generation. Because we stand on the shoulders of giants, on the shoulders of women who paved the way forward also for us. Towards a world in which our daughters today regard women's rights, our human rights, as a simple fact, not as something revolutionary. Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, feminist leaders, ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate the courageous women who fought for every single phrase, for every single word in the Beijing Declaration. Their fight paid off. The Beijing Declaration was a watershed achievement advancing women's rights, resources, and representation. As Mama Mongella, how she was called, stated in 1995, a revolution has begun. There's no going back. Yet, 30 years later, the revolution remains unfinished. When the phrase, "she runs like a girl," is hailed as an insult, when highly qualified CEOs are called diversity hires, when a female world leader is attacked on social media not for the speech she gave, but for the wrong high heels she wore, that is when we remember how far we still have to go. There's no country in the world where women's rights are fully equal to men. And there are still too many places where even speaking about women's rights is a matter of life and death. Just weeks ago in Afghanistan, after the deadly earthquake, women and girls were left trapped in rubble as male rescuers were forbidden from touching them. As one survivor said, being a woman here means we are always the last to be seen. We see this also in Sudan, where the brutal civil war between two generals is literally being fought over women's bodies. I still have her voice in my ear when one mother told me, while I was sitting with her in a refugee camp, that she wishes that they all would have been simply killed, instead of having to see her daughters being raped over and over again. This year alone, demand for life-saving post-rape support in Sudan increased almost 4 times. And this is no exception. 1 in 3 women globally will experience sexual violence at some point in her lifetime. 1 out of 3. This is us. And these battles extend to family planning. UNFPA estimates that today a quarter of women are unable to make decisions about their own health care, and roughly half of all pregnancies are unintended. Delivering on Beijing, on this revolution, means also that no male politician, judge or religious leader should dare to tell our girls what to do with their bodies, because they are human beings, not property. It's our body, our choice. In this regard, I'm honored we are joined by our first guest speaker, Cecilia Suarez, who is using her platform to speak out against this scourge in Latin America and the Caribbean, affecting as many as 76% of women in the region. But even in the darkest hours, women are not victims. They are survivors. They are heroes. And it's an extreme honor that we will also hear from our guest speaker, Nadia Murad, Nobel laureate, a hero who not only survived the unthinkable crimes of ISIS, but gave Yazidi women a voice and by that defeated a terrorist organization. Women like Nadia Murad remind us that women's rights are not only human rights, but human rights are the best weapon for peace. Excluding women peace builders doesn't just reduce the possibility of peace, it undermines its very foundation and longevity. Therefore, we are celebrating today not only Beijing, but also 25 years of Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. Excellencies, Beijing and Resolution 1325 promised not only rights, but also resources. And there, the revolution has barely begun. At the current rate, reaching economic equality will take 123 years. But women's economic empowerment is not just about doing a favor for women, but a favor for every society, every economy. As they say, it's economics, stupid. Closing the gender gap would increase global GDP by $7 trillion US. Which brings us to the third R, representation. We all know that when women are at the table, companies perform better, peace treaties last longer, and governments deliver more. Their presence is power. Yet, in this hall of principles, last year, fewer than 10% of speakers during high-level week were women. And out of all 80 presidents of the General Assembly, I'm only the 5th woman. Not even speaking about the Secretary General, where in 80 years we have never had a female SG. This is not just This is, as we can hear, not just a matter of representation, it's a matter of credibility to practice what we preach. But it's not only who is leading, it is how we lead. Leadership means collaboration. The theme of this 80th session overall is better together. A motto which also guided Beijing, where so many women came together in networks like Femnet, led by Memory Kachamba, a guest speaker here also today. Ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate this spirit of better together and the courage of the women who paved the path to Beijing and beyond. But tomorrow we go back to work. As female presidents, as male presidents, as Olympic sprinters, as CEOs, as ordinary mothers and daughters. And just in case, while finishing the revolution from Beijing, we might hear that contemptuous phrase, "you run like a girl," we should remember what little girls all around the world would do. Exactly that. Proudly run like a girl, fast as hell, even in high heels, showing that women's rights are always human rights, that they are our rights, our future. I now invite the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, to make a statement.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, dear friends. 30 years ago, the world came together to affirm that the rights of women and girls are not separate, secondary, or negotiable. They are human rights. The Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action is the most ambitious global political commitment on women's rights ever achieved. And it has helped to power advances in some critical areas: legal protection, political participation, education, maternal mortality, recognizing the need to tackle violence against women as a global priority, and more. But progress has been slow and uneven, and no nation has achieved full equality for women and girls. Sustainable Development Goal 5, gender equality, is lagging far behind. Hard-won gains are now under attack. Meanwhile, conflicts and climate disasters are multiplying, and the human rights of women and girls are casualties of both. Cultural and structural barriers remain entrenched, and technology is spreading hate like a virus. A wave of misogyny is rolling across the world. Let us be clear. Equal rights and opportunities are not partisan issues. They are global imperatives and the foundation of peace, prosperity, and progress. Excellencies, dear friends, in every region, every country, every community, women and girls are fighting for their rights, demanding freedoms, combating abusive practices, rallying for legal protections, and organizing to take their rightful place at the table in decision-making and peace processes. And the United Nations stands with them. All leaders should do the same, by speaking out for the rights of women and girls, by making clear that tradition cannot excuse oppression, and by doing everything possible to realize the vision of the Beijing Declaration. Excellencies, dear friends, earlier this year, countries took an important step forward. The Commission on the Status of Women adopted a new political declaration committing to implement the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action fast and in full. So now all countries must live up to that responsibility. We need strong, visible support at the highest levels and concrete plans backed by real investment to support women's organizations, services, and solutions, to deliver the Beijing Plus 30 action agenda, to advance socio-economic empowerment, to defend women's rights, and to confront a challenge that was barely imagined 3 decades ago. Artificial intelligence is reshaping our world, but the transformation is unfolding in an industry dominated by men, shaped by biased data, and driven by algorithms that frequently reinforce discrimination. We must confront violence and online hate and ensure that technology serves equality, not exclusion. And that includes a priority in investing in women and girls' education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Because women's participation in decision-making on this issue and every other, it is not a gift, it is a right. It strengthens societies, enriches debate, and boosts equality across the board. We must remove systematic obstacles to equality for women and girls. From discrimination to unequal pay and inequality before the law, We need universal ratification of the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. Excellences,
Excellencies, lastly, we need proactive steps to bring women into decision-making at every level. Here at the United Nations, through a dedicated effort, we have achieved and maintained gender parity among the senior leadership.
On these. Some think that we had to bend the rules in favor of women to reach parity. Totally wrong. The only thing we did was to guarantee that there was effective equality opportunities for women and men, and that the selection processes had not a misogynist bias. And the result was parity at the level of the high direction of the United Nations. Nous poursuivrons nos efforts pour...
We will keep working to reach gender parity across the organization, and our Gender Equality Acceleration Plan charts our path forward. Your Excellencies, 80 years ago, the United Nations Charter affirmed the equal rights of women and men. 30 years ago, the Beijing Declaration declared women's rights as human rights. In this hall today, we need to hear how you will make those ambitions a reality. Let us hear your commitments. Let us see your plans. Let us deliver together the equality for women and girls that our world so sorely needs. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary General. I now invite Her Excellency Huang Shouwei, Deputy Head of the National Working Committee on Children and Women of the State Council of China, as host of the 4th World Conference on Women, to make a statement.
Distinguished Madam President, distinguished colleagues, China commends the General Assembly for convening this meeting to mark the 30th anniversary of the Beijing World Conference on Women. Just as what Madam President stated, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action for Women has a milestone kind of significance. It is a source of wisdom and strength, and it continues to provide a blueprint for action that continues to guide global efforts towards gender equality. Over the past 3 decades, the World Conference on Women has been a catalyst for tremendous change, from advancing legal reforms to expanding social services, from empowering women to enhancing their participation. Countries have made notable strides toward gender equality. Countless women have undergone profound transformations, moving from silence to voice, from the margins to the center, and from dependence to independence. These achievements testify to the foresight and enduring vitality of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Gender equality is not only a human right, but also a powerful driver of sustainable development. For the past 30 years, as host of the Beijing Conference on Women, China has honored its commitments through concrete action. Under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, China has steadfastly advanced gender equality as a fundamental national policy, implemented 4 successive cycles of the National Program for Women's Development, and built a comprehensive legal framework of more than 100 laws and regulations to safeguard women's rights and interests. With measurable and effective institutional mechanisms, China has significantly strengthened women's empowerment in the fields of economy, health, education, employment, political participation, and social protection, benefiting 690 million women. Chinese women, with their creativity, continue to hold up half the sky in the nation's progress. China has consistently championed the advancements of women around the world. In partnership with the United Nations, China established the Prize for Girls and Women's Education, with Professor Peng Liyuan, spouse of President Xi Jinping, serving as special envoy. China has trained more than 200,000 female professionals from over 180 countries and regions, and has carried out empowerment projects totaling over $40 million in more than 20 countries. The Global Center for Digital Empowerment of Women, established by China, offers a new platform to help bridge the digital gender divide and to promote women's meaningful participation in AI development. Distinguished Madam President, colleagues, at present, this century's profound transformation is accelerating, and the global governance stands at a critical crossroads. Nearly 10% of women remain trapped in extreme poverty. More than 600 million women lived amid conflict, and violence against women, discrimination, and economic inequality continue. Developing countries face an annual funding gap of $420 billion for gender equality. These challenges call for urgent, more proactive, and pragmatic action. Chinese President Xi Jinping's proposal for a global governance initiative comes at a critical juncture. Advancing gender equality and the full development of women requires strengthened international cooperation, accelerated action, and sustained commitments. At this new starting point, China calls for the following: continued advancement of the equal development of women. Safeguarding women's rights and interests should be elevated as a national priority and embedded as a social norm. The allocation of resources to this end should be increased to ensure women's equal access to opportunities and their full participation. Continued empowerment of women in innovation and development. Quality education for women and girls should be provided. Digital technologies should be harnessed to strengthen their capabilities, support their leadership, and unlock their innovative potential. Continue to promote the shared development of women worldwide. All countries should uphold genuine multilateralism and fully leverage the vital role of the UN, deepen South-South cooperation and North-South dialogue, and expand financial and technical support for developing countries, leaving no woman or girl behind. Distinguished Madam President, dear colleagues, gender equality is not only a matter for women, but a cornerstone of human progress and human civilization. Let us remain true to our original aspirations and mission, continue to translate the blueprint of the Beijing Declaration and platform for action into tangible results, and work together to build a community with a shared future for all. I look forward to welcoming you at the Global Summit on Women in Beijing. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Head of the National Working Committee on Children and Women of the State Council of China. I now invite Ms. Seema Bahous, Executive Director of the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, to make her statement.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, distinguished heads of state and government, Your Majesties, Ministers, Excellencies. 30 years ago, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action changed the world. It brought the UN Charter's principles and promises to life for women and girls. Human rights, dignity, equality. To this day, the Beijing Declaration remains the most visionary, groundbreaking, and far-reaching global agenda for gender equality and women's rights. And it has delivered. Today, girls are far more likely to finish school than any other moment in history. Maternal deaths have nearly halved. The number of women in parliament has more than doubled, and nearly every country has laws to end violence against women and girls. And in just the last 5 years alone, nearly 100 discriminatory laws have been reversed. Every step forward was hard-won by feminist movements, by governments, by the multilateral system, and every step forward proved the same truth: gender equality works. But progress has not been fast enough, wide enough, or deep enough, and in too many places it is being reversed. On our current path, 351 million women and girls will still live in extreme poverty by 2030. And today, 676 million women and girls live within reach of deadly conflict, the highest recorded since the 1990s. Women and girls in crises suffer unspeakable atrocities, hunger and violence, from Afghanistan, the DRC, Gaza, the Sudan, Ukraine, to Yemen and beyond. Women and girls bear the brunt of crisis. We owe it to them to spare no effort in the pursuit for peace. Excellencies, the very systems built to advance and fund gender equality are being hollowed out quietly but deliberately. This is not just regression, it is retreat. But the future is not fixed. Another path is still possible. Excellencies, as we commemorate 80 years of the United Nations and 30 years since the Beijing Declaration, 2025 must be our turning point. This is why, in this pivotal year, we asked governments to recommit with bold, measurable actions across a roadmap of 6 priority areas. And you answered. 108 governments have stepped forward with 196 national actions on the Beijing Plus 30 action agenda. You are investing in care systems, strengthening gender data, and funding women peace builders on the front lines. You are putting power, protection, and possibility in the hands of women and girls. You are harnessing technology and innovation to advance, not hinder, equality. And you are enacting laws to protect women and girls from violence. Your actions reflect partnerships with feminist movements who have carried this agenda through times of backlash and breakthrough alike. Importantly, your actions prioritize the leadership and voice of adolescent girls and women. These actions form a map of the possible, and we know what that possible can deliver when we come together. just this past week, you took another step forward together when you adopted by consensus the resolution to revitalize the Commission on the Status of Women, a timely legacy of Beijing Plus 30. I applaud you for this. This is multilateralism at its best. Excellencies, your words today must be matched by courage tomorrow. In the policies you pass, in the budgets you allocate, and the change you drive together with and for women. Because gender equality remains a unifying force for the world. Let history remember 2025 as the year we stood our ground for ceasefires, for peace, for justice, for equal rights, for sustainable development, and for prosperity for all women, for all girls, for all humanity. I thank you.
I thank the Executive Director of the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women. I now invite Ms. Dean Kaita, Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund, to make her statement.
Mr. Secretary General, Madam President, Excellencies, esteemed colleagues. 30 years ago, in Beijing, the world pledged to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment. 1 year earlier, at the International Conference on Population and Development in Cairo, government affirmed that sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights are a precondition for women empowerment and essential to dignity and development. Population, sexual reproductive health and rights, and gender equality are inextricably linked. Beijing and Cairo go hand in hand, mutually reinforcing and universal. Today, we gather not only to commemorate, but also to thank the member states for their efforts. While significant progress has been made, it is fragile. Too many women still die giving birth. Too many women and girls are denied safety and opportunity. Millions of youth and marginalized people do not have their most basic needs met. And new threats are rising: climate change, increasing conflict, digital world where technology, including artificial intelligence, can be fabulous opportunities when used properly, instead of being weaponized against women and girls. Demographic shifts are reshaping societies. Rapid population growth in some regions, aging in others, rising migration. Systems are strained, inequalities deepen, reproductive rights come under threat. Excellences, je m'adresse à vous.
Excellencies, I address you today as the new Executive Director of UNFPA. I take on this responsibility with humility and determination. I am determined to protect what has been achieved and to stand up for human rights and to go further together so that the promises made in Beijing and Cairo are finally upheld. The United Nations Population Fund is at your side, alongside the partners in the United Nations, civil society, and particularly women's organizations and networks as they continue their tireless work to promote the rights and choices of women and girls in all their diversity. UNFPA's contribution to these efforts is unique. As a public health and population agency, we work to ensure that every woman and girl can live free from violence and decide freely on her future. Sexual and reproductive health and rights are the foundation of equality in our society, the best investment in the better, fairer world envisioned in the 2030 Agenda.
Beijing and Cairo with urgent action. Under our Secretary General leadership, we look forward to delivering as one with our sister agency on the ground. Let us recommit to do better together and make sure that no woman should die while giving life. Let's invest in right and choices, the foundation of justice, prosperity, and peace. Merci.
Merci. I thank the Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund. I now invite Ms. Hala Haidar, Chair of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, to make her statement.
Madam President of the GA, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. 30 years after Beijing, it must be said loud and clear, gender equality is not a favor. It's not optional. It is justice, peace, and progress for all humanity. Beijing gave us a powerful blueprint. It mandated the world to tackle 12 urgent areas: poverty, education, violence, decision-making, among others. And it transformed global policies. We have made gains: stronger laws against gender-based violence, more girls in schools, and a growing recognition that women's rights are human rights. But let us be honest. We are at a crossroad. Around the world, we witness a backlash against women's human rights, their underrepresentation in decision-making, online abuse, and discrimination against women being coded into new technologies. Moreover, we are horrified by the impact of conflict on women and girls. This is why CEDAW, the committee and the convention, matters more than ever. Beijing gave us the vision. CEDAW gives us the compass. The convention is legally binding. It holds states to account and measures progress and turns promises into rights that cannot be taken away. CEDAW covers every Beijing priority: defends women's economic rights, access to resources, calls for education, a force of transformation, places gender-based violence against women at the center of its concern and demands action. It advances women's voice in peace and security processes, and in that regard, CEDAW has just published an addendum on WPS. And with General Recommendation number 40 on the equal and inclusive representation of women in decision-making system, whose elaboration was supported by a large number of member states, it sets a bold roadmap for 50-50 parity in decision-making, not some distant day, but now. CEDAW is not a bystander. It's a driving force. It is addressing many emerging issues faced by women and girls in conflict, online abuse, stereotypes, and the gendered impacts of climate change. So today, let us stand together and say we will not go back. We will not allow the progress of the past 30 years to be undone. We will renew our commitments, demand accountability, and keep pushing until every woman and girl can live in freedom, equality, and dignity. Beijing gave us the blueprint. CEDAW gives us the compass. Today, as we celebrate Beijing Plus 30, I call on every government, in every institution, and every one of us. Let us turn today's momentum into a movement. Let us act united, boldly, urgently, until equality is no longer a dream, but the lived reality of every woman and girls everywhere. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the Chair of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. I now invite Ms. Claudia Flores, Chair of the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls, to make a statement.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates and colleagues, it is an honor to join you in my capacity as chair of the UN Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls. Thank you for including the working group in this landmark discussion. As we reflect on and reaffirm the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, We have both an opportunity, but also a responsibility. We celebrate the gains of the last 30 years, recognizing that these victories, above all, belong to the brave women and girls human rights defenders who have pressed forward in the face of great restraints and risk. We also acknowledge the important progress achieved by member states in partnership with diverse stakeholders. As it marks its 15th anniversary, the working group has seen meaningful strides, from laws ensuring equal participation in public life, to reforms dismantling discrimination in family and cultural life, to new investments expanding women's and girls' economic rights. These advances demonstrate what is possible when states commit systematically to equality in all of its dimensions. Yet, we must also confront the reality that alongside this progress, and perhaps in response to it, a troubling wave of backlash threatens women and girls' rights worldwide, including challenges to the very concept of gender as the social and cultural norms and power relations we have built around sex. We see retrogressive narratives and policies designed to restrict rights and divide movements for dignity and equality. These are not abstract debates. They are concrete harms with grave costs for women and girls. In our most recent response, the working group, together with 30 independent mandate holders, issued a joint statement reaffirming the centrality of gender to the protection of human rights. Today, I urge states to act with determination to preserve international consensus and protect hard-won gains for women and girls. At the same time, we also recognize that these moments of challenge can be moments of opportunity. The working group remains committed to supporting states and stakeholders in advancing substantive gender equality as articulated in CEDAW. This year, through its forthcoming report on artificial intelligence and through the CREATE framework presented in its latest guidance, this framework offers a holistic and inclusive pathway to counter the gender backlash and to foster the transformation needed for a global community truly rooted in human dignity. Excellencies, while we celebrate the achievements of member states, civil society, the United Nations, all who are gathered here, we must also confront urgently and honestly what it will take to achieve gender equality. We can't afford another 30 years of effort only to see progress unravel. What is needed now is investment and political will to hold the line, the clarity to find ways forward amidst mounting challenges, and the integrity to trust women and girls as they continue to lead the way. Thank you.
I thank the chair of the Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls. I now invite Ms. Reem Al-Salem, Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls, its causes and consequences, to make her statement.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies. 30 years ago, the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action, the BDPA, gave the world a visionary blueprint that recognized the structural, societal, and individual causes of violence against women and their consequences. Today, as we commemorate its anniversary, we must recommit to its promise with honesty and courage. That starts with returning to the original intent of the BDPA, not diluted, not reinterpreted, and to implementing it comprehensively and not superficially. Let me highlight 6 commitments that are especially urgent and pertinent today. First, we must reaffirm women's inherent dignity and humanity. The BDPA mentions dignity 7 times and humanity 5 times, reminding us that women are not a subset, but are half of humanity. Yet today, those words have vanished from our policy language as though women's most basic worth and rights could be set aside. If we lose the language of dignity and humanity, we lose the foundation of equality. Second, we must reclaim the material reality of being female. The BDPA references the term sex or a derivative of it 176 times, recalling that all major human rights instruments prohibit discrimination on that basis. And yet, 3 decades later, the architects of the BDPA would be in disbelief to learn that stating this truth is branded by some as hateful, outdated, and regressive. Third, we must confront the rampant commodification and objectification of women and girls. Their bodies, their sexuality, and even reproductive functions have been turned into products for the sale and purchase, creating patriarchal entitlements and control, both online and offline. The BDPA was gravely and rightly concerned with this exploitation, particularly of prostitution and trafficking for sexual exploitation, and urged states to prosecute those who profit from it. Today, we must finally heed that call. Fourth, the BDPA identified aggression, colonialism, and foreign occupation as causes of grave violations, ethnic cleansing, genocide that fall within cruelty on women and girls.